Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a close look at a really pivotal chapter in American history, roughly spanning from 1844 to 1877.
Right.
This was a period of incredible growth, yeah, but also profound divisions that ultimately reshaped the nation in some fundamental ways.
Absolutely.
We've been poring over your sources, articles, research, historical documents to try and pull out the most important insights.
hmm
And our mission really is to understand how two powerful, often tangled forces, the massive influx of immigrants and the ever-escalating tensions around slavery, how they define this era.
It's definitely a time when things that might seem separate, the arrival of new cultures looking for a better life, and the entrenched, frankly, immoral system of human bondage.
Yeah.
They were actually deeply connected. These forces together created this complex web of challenges and changes.
And that dramatically altered American culture.
Oh, completely. And undeniably set the nation on a path towards an unavoidable conflict.
Yeah.
You'll see how the whole idea of who even belonged in America and what liberty really meant was being fiercely debated.
Okay, so get ready to dive in with us as we try to uncover some surprising connections and the lasting impacts of these tumultuous years. So maybe let's start by unpacking the sheer scale of human movement during this time. The materials we've looked at show a truly significant wave of international migrants, mostly from Europe and Asia.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, when you think about the existing population, America was changing incredibly fast. Not just growing geographically, but the actual people were changing.
Exactly. These individuals, these families, they were often seeking new opportunities, a fresh start, but they also faced huge challenges.
Right.
And a core insight here, I think, is that instead of instantly melting into some single American identity, many established these cultural enclaves.
As distinct communities.
Precisely. Vibrant ethnic communities where they could hold on to their traditions, their languages, even while they slowly began to integrate into the wider American society. It created this rich, diverse, sometimes pretty tense cultural mix.
The sources first really draw our attention to the Irish. Their mass migration, it was largely kicked off by the devastating potato famine, right? Between 1845 and 52.
The Great Hunger, yeah.
And they mostly ended up in cities, with huge numbers flocking to places like New York City, particularly that infamous 5 Points neighborhood.
Oh, 5 points.
And the descriptions from back then paint a really stark picture. Incredibly tough conditions, slums, disease everywhere, massive unemployment.
And terrible infant mortality rates.
Yeah, some of the highest in the country. It's hard to even imagine the kind of grit it took just to survive that.
It really is. And then you have the Germans. While many also settled in cities, a notable chunk moved west looking for farmland.
Right.
But even in the cities, think about Klein-Deutschland, little Germany and lower Manhattan back then. This community really provided that cultural continuity. German language schools, churches, the beer halls, newspapers.
A real touchstone.
Exactly. A
Yeah.
familiar space while people were trying to navigate the new, the U.S. industrial labor markets. And you see figures like Isaac Mayer-Wise.
The rabbi.
That's the one. A German-Jewish immigrant rabbi who founded Hebrew Union College in 1875. It just clearly shows how immigrants were actively shaping religious diversity and adapting these ancient traditions to American life. It wasn't just about surviving. It was about building something new, too.
But it wasn't just Europeans coming over, was it? The documents also detail a significant Asian presence.
No, not at all.
Like the 6 Chinese companies in San Francisco. These sound like really powerful groups.
They were kind of benevolent associations that provided aid, helped find jobs, even offered legal defense for Chinese immigrants.
Crucial support then.
Absolutely essential for organizing life in places like Chinatowns, especially after the gold rush kicked off. They helped people preserve traditions while facing, frankly, intense discrimination. Indeed. And another fascinating detail from the sources is the Tin Hau Temple, founded way back in 1852 in San Francisco.
Okay.
It's actually the oldest Chinese Taoist temple in the U.S. It served as both a spiritual and cultural anchor for the community.
That early, 1852.
Yeah. And even earlier, you have the Filipino fishing community of St. Malo, Louisiana, established probably in the 18th, maybe early 19th century near New Orleans.
Wow, I didn't know about that one.
It's one of the very first permanent Asian American settlements.
Yeah.
It just shows us how diverse groups were transplanting and maintaining their traditions, often for generations, long before that big mid-19th century influx that most people think about.
Okay, so now, this huge demographic shift, all these new faces, new cultures arriving. It definitely didn't go
This
unnoticed.
is certainly not.
And sadly, it wasn't universally welcomed. The sources show a pretty strong backlash from native-born Americans. It manifested as this potent anti-Catholic nativist movement,
Hmm.
aimed mostly at trying to limit the new immigrants' political power and cultural influence.
Right. Nativism basically is this policy of protecting the interests of the native-born against immigrants. And during this period, that sentiment was sharply anti-Catholic.
Especially towards the Irish.
Very much so. The Irish were often seen as, well, not the right kind of white or Christian. Their Catholic faith was a major difference from the largely Protestant American society at the time, making them easy targets for suspicion, for discrimination.
We found three pretty stark examples in the materials that really show the intensity of this backlash.
Okay.
First, there was the Know Nothing Party, also called the American Party. They were a real political force in the 1850s.
Mm-hmm. Quite powerful for a time.
They actively fought against immigration, especially Irish Catholics. They
Yeah.
wanted to make it take longer for immigrants to become citizens, restrict Catholic political influence.
They really feared immigrants were threatening Protestant values and, of course, jobs.
Yeah. And their name, the Know Nothings, came from members always saying we know nothing when asked about their beliefs, right?
Mhm.
Shows how secretive and organized they were.
It does. It's sort of coded message.
Then, second example, the Philadelphia nativist riots of 1844.
Ah, yes. Very violent.
Just awful. Violent clashes between anti-immigrant Protestants and Irish Catholic immigrants. Churches burned, neighborhoods attacked, dozens of people died.
It's a really brutal symbol of that anti-Catholic prejudice in cities and just how extreme nativist feelings could get.
And third, this one's a legal precedent. People v. Hall in 1854, California Supreme Court case.
A truly chilling decision.
It ruled that Chinese people, and by extension, other non-whites, couldn't testify against white people in California courts.
Think about that. It effectively silenced an entire community in the legal system.
Yeah, it wasn't just some minor thing. It legally entrenched racial discrimination against Asian immigrants, making them incredibly vulnerable. No way to seek justice if wronged by a white person.
It really makes you confront that vital question, doesn't it? How do societies handle the tension between welcoming new people and trying to keep existing social structures? Especially when those structures are, let's be honest, built on exclusion and fear. These examples just clearly show how economic worries and cultural fears could just spiral into violence and discriminatory laws, deeply affecting people's lives and shaping American law for decades.
Okay, so moving from that powerful force of immigration and reaction, let's shift gears now to what the sources call the core beef between the regions, slavery, specifically its expansion.
Right, it's a central conflict.
And this tension was just profoundly fueled by the very different economic systems in the North and the South.
Exactly. You had the North's rapidly expanding manufacturing economy. It relied on what they called free labor.
Meaning wage workers.
Right, wage laborers, mostly working in factories and cities, and many Northerners, even if they weren't morally opposed to slavery itself.
Which many weren't.
Correct. Many weren't abolitionists on principle, but they argued strongly that slavery would undermine their free labor market. They saw it as a threat to their economic model, to the idea of the independent worker earning a wage.
Okay, contrast that with the Southern economy. Almost entirely dependent on enslaved labor, right? For its huge agricultural plantations, especially cotton.
Completely dependent. It was a fundamental, utterly irreconcilable difference in how they generated wealth, how they organized their entire society. The whole social and economic structure of the South rested on the backs of enslaved people.
So that difference naturally led to conflict over new territories.
Directly. It led to the rise of the free soil movement. This movement argued really strongly that expanding slavery was just incompatible with free labor.
But they weren't necessarily trying to end slavery in the South itself.
Not initially, no. Crucially, their focus was opposing its expansion into new territories, especially the lands gained from the Mexican cession.
Got it.
But Southerners, naturally, saw this opposition as a massive threat. A threat to their constitutional rights as they saw them, their economic survival, their entire way of life. They viewed it as an attack on their fundamental social order.
So amidst this simmering tension, you have this powerful, increasingly visible campaign emerge. The abolitionist movement.
Highly visible, highly vocal.
Though often a minority in the North, right. But these African American and white abolitionists, they mounted this fierce campaign against slavery. They used moral arguments, help people escape.
And sometimes even expressed a willingness to use violence.
Right. Their passion for freedom was undeniable. But what really struck me from the sources was the sheer variety of strategies they used.
Absolutely. What you see with these incredible figures isn't just a fight against injustice. It's like a masterclass in different forms of resistance, from writing and speaking to direct action, even to calls for uprising.
Let's talk about some key figures. Frederick Douglass, for example.
A giant, formerly enslaved, became perhaps the most famous black abolitionist. He published the North Star newspaper, wrote these incredibly powerful autobiographies.
Exposing the horrors of slavery.
Exactly. He masterfully used emotion, logic, his own lived experience, pathos, logos, ethos, to persuade audiences like few others could. He pushed for moral change, but also supported political action, working with free soilers and eventually Republicans.
Then there was Harriet Beecher Stowe, Uncle Tom's Cabin in 1852.
Hugely influential. That novel just galvanized Northern anti-slavery feeling by showing the moral evils of slavery in a way that reached ordinary people, huge audiences.
Caused outrage in the South, I bet.
Oh, absolutely. They tried to ban it wherever they could, which just shows how powerful its impact was.
And we have to talk about Harriet Tubman.
Of course. An escaped enslaved woman herself became a key conductor on the Underground Railroad, personally led dozens, maybe hundreds, of enslaved people to freedom.
Just incredible bravery.
Her life was just pure direct resistance and service to freedom, a living symbol of liberation. And the Underground Railroad itself, that network of trails and safe houses,
Allowed tens of thousands to escape.
tens of thousands reached freedom, often going all the way to Canada to get beyond the reach of the fugitive slave law. It was a massive testament to collective bravery and resistance.
Beyond the books and the escape networks, you also had voices calling for more direct, even militant action?
Yes,
Yeah.
like Henry Highland Garnet,
Yeah.
a black abolitionist who gave that famous address to the slaves of the United States back in 1843.
What did he say?
He essentially urged enslaved people to rise up in revolt. It represents a wing of abolitionism that was ready to endorse violence for liberation.
And then there's John Brown.
John Brown, a fierce, almost fanatical abolitionist. He truly believed a slave uprising was the only way to rid America of slavery.
His raid on Harper's Ferry in 1859, it failed, but the impact was huge.
Massive. Southerners saw it as proof positive of what abolitionists really wanted: a Northern plot to start a race war. It just poured gasoline on the fire, fueling the sectional divide, pushing the nation much closer to war.
We also find figures like Sojourner Truth.
Yes, another incredible figure, formerly enslaved, became this traveling preacher and abolitionist. Her famous 8-Aisle Woman speech.
Powerful.
So powerful. And she linked abolitionism directly with women's rights. She really bridged these reform movements, tying together gender, race, and freedom in her message.
And even within the movement, there wasn't always agreement.
No, definitely not. There were divisions, debates about the best path forward. You had Martin Delany, one of the first African Americans admitted to Harvard Medical School, advocating black nationalism, even colonization in Africa.
Really? Colonization?
Yes, reflecting different views on how to achieve true liberation and self-determination. Meanwhile, you had Dr. James McCune Smith, the first African-American to hold a medical degree, using his scientific knowledge, his writings, his speeches to just dismantle the racist arguments used to justify slavery.
Yeah.
Using intellect as a weapon against injustice. It really shows the breadth of thought and action within the movement.
Okay, so given this fervent abolitionist movement, pushing from multiple angles, what was happening on the other side, the sources outline equally fervent defenses of slavery, right? Arguments trying to justify the institution.
Oh, absolutely. These defenses were largely built on several pillars, you could say. One was racial doctrines, ideas about black inferiority.
Right.
Another was a view that slavery was actually a positive social good,
Yeah.
beneficial for both the enslaver and the enslaved, believe it or not.
Hard to fathom.
And third, the belief that slavery and the state's rights to maintain it were protected by the Constitution. It created this complex, deeply ingrained justification system.
We see a direct cultural response to Uncle Tom's Cabin, this other book, Aunt Phyllis's Cabin, by Mary Henderson Eastman in 1852.
Yes, the anti-Tom novel, essentially. A pro-slavery novel that tried to claim slavery provided stability, even benevolence. It portrayed enslaved people as loyal, content.
The counter-narrative.
Exactly. A prime example of that positive good argument put into popular culture, trying to fight back against abolitionist narratives with this romanticized, deeply flawed picture.
And on the economic and political front, you mentioned James Henry Hammond.
Right, a South Carolina senator, very vocal defender of slavery, famous for his Cotton is King speech in 1858.
What was the argument?
He argued the entire world economy depended on Southern cotton, implying slavery was therefore essential for global prosperity. He also pushed his mudsill theory.
Rodsill.
Yeah, the idea that all societies need a permanent laboring class at the bottom of the mudsill to do the menial work, allowing the upper classes to progress. And he claims slavery fulfilled this role perfectly in America, providing a stable, controlled workforce.
Wow. That connects directly back to what you said about the North's free labor ideas, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It highlights those irreconcilable differences in their basic economic and social philosophies. It was truly a clash of two completely different worldviews, different civilizations almost.
What an incredible deep dive into these years, 1844 to 1877. We've seen a nation just transformed by waves of immigrants seeking new lives, building vibrant communities, but also facing these intense nativist backlashes.
Backlashes that sometimes turned violent or got written into discriminatory laws.
Exactly. And we've explored that escalating sectional conflict over slavery, fueled by those stark economic differences and these passionate moral debates that ultimately brought the country right to the brink of war.
It's really remarkable, isn't it, how the North's commitment to free labor, even when it wasn't purely about abolition,
Right.
how it fundamentally clashed with the South's total reliance on enslaved labor. This wasn't just some abstract moral argument. It was a clash of two distinct economic systems. One built, at least in theory, on individual advancement, the other on forced human exploitation. It just made compromise harder and harder to imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And all this was happening while these new immigrant populations were dramatically changing the cultural landscape of America, adding even more layers of complexity to an already tense and divided nation.
You know, as you look at how all these different groups adapted and resisted, and how these fiercely different visions of America clashed, whether it was about who truly belonged or what genuine liberty even meant, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How much of that struggle for identity and freedom, both personal and national, still echoes in the debates we have today about who belongs, about what true liberty really means in our own time.
That's definitely something to think about long after our deep dive today.